As games become more and more narrative focused, we see more literary devices used in terms of expressing the stories and that they try to tell. We've got the usual stuff, your symbolism like the snowstorm in Max Payne, juxtapositions like in Persona 5, and so on. However, there has always been this one aspect in literature that has always interested me, and really in any form of media: foreshadowing. Also, before I get started, spoilers for the games that I've listed on screen right now. Sorry, because with a topic like this, it is hard to stay within the no spoiler territory. But yeah, sorry again, but let's just dive right into foreshadowing. Right, so foreshadowing is quite simple to understand, and it is when a writer or whomever is creating the story leaves subtle hints about a later event that is foretold through environmental hints or through dialogue. So in a way, if you pick up all the hints, you can make a logical yet vague guess as to what the plot is about, what's going to happen, and what the possible twist, if there is any, could be. My favorite way in how foreshadowing can happen is through a method called Chekhov's gun. And that is if you, well, in the direct term where it comes from, is that if you show a gun at the beginning of the story, that at some point later in the story, the gun needs to be used and go off. This means that quite literally, every single minute detail in the world can come back later to further the story. Now that I've laid out a description of what foreshadowing is and one of my favorite examples of it, let's dive into some instances of how games foreshadow later events. And there is no better place to start than with music. Music is a very good way at foreshadowing events of a game through a single word, which is leitmotifs. A leitmotif is basically a recurring theme which can be used in music or literature. So in terms of music, this means that the melodies, chord progressions can be used to represent a theme, or in the direction that I want to take this point, character themes. Character themes are all unique to a single character, so that not only do they differ in terms of appearance and dialogue, but also by their accompanying music that shows their personality. Final Fantasy VII, for example, Barrett's theme has horns that show his strength, yet followed by soft lead that shows his caring nature, and Aerith's theme has all these instruments that sound mystical, melancholic, and sad, and when she does end up falling at the hands of Sephiroth, the theme shows us her hopes and aspirations to save the planet. Final Fantasy VII has good character themes, but now back to the leitmotifs in character themes, and where else to start than in Undertale. Undertale, and more specifically, Toby Fox, is an absolute genius at creating storylines through his music, and Undertale's soundtrack tells a story on its own, and accompanied with the game, it's just so much better. But the music, yes, many themes are used to link certain characters and story segments. Take the less significant bosses, the big mini-bosses, how you'd call it, Napstablook, Mad Dummy, and Muppet, which all have the same ghost fight song, leitmotif, but it's sped up on the upcoming bosses, or how Toriel's theme is heard in Asgore's final boss fight, showing how he still cares for his ex-wife. But the biggest leitmotif is at the very beginning, which relates to your ending and the revelation of who Flowey actually is. After your tutorial with Flowey, we learn to see him as the enemy, which makes us hear his theme as synonymous with evil. But if we go a bit deeper, we actually hear that the notes and stuff aren't necessarily evil, which subconsciously makes us view Flowey not as the all-ending evil, rather a good being who has lost their way. And this becomes more prevalent in the Omega Flowey boss fight, where the Flowey motif plays in between the heavy drum and bass themes when the Photoshop Flowey overbears you, as a briefer moment. Even later, when we found out Flowey is Toriel and Asgore's child called Azriel, the theme plays, and we not only hear the theme we have become used to, but in a way, a battle where we can't win or lose. We are experiencing the emotions of Azriel. I hope that makes a bit sense, but Flowey's theme plays at the start of our journey in the Underground, and the last person we beat in the true ending, which, yes, kind of is foreshadowing of a sense, and makes it clear that Flowey is the gatekeeper of the game, leading us into the game and right back out of it. Leitmotifs aren't only tools for foreshadowing, but also show links to different games, like difficulty. This game is a recent one, but this was one example that I really wanted to talk about, and that is Pokémon Legends Arceus. I won't be talking a lot about sound here, but rather a theme of sorts, which can be linked to a red herring. A red herring is a type of foreshadowing which is meant to defer suspicion away from the consumer, so that the twist can end up being a surprise in fact. In Legends Arceus, we become acquainted with a merchant called Volo. The dude shows up like so many times, mostly to talk about ancient mysteries and his ever-growing curiosity, and he battles us, I think it's 3 times, but we'll look at the first 2 battles before looking at the third one. First, he battles us with a Togepi, and on the second one, he sends out a Gible and a Togepi. Now, to understand this leitmotif here, we need this leitmotif and foreshadowing, we need to look at the Gen 4 Pokemon games, Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. If you have played these games, you can see a striking resemblance to Cynthia, and we can draw the conclusion that Volo is indeed Cynthia's ancestor. Similar Pokemon, as Cynthia uses the final evolved forms, Garchomp and Togekiss, and Cynthia is also a very curious person regarding Pokemon history. With all this information, the leitmotifs that parallel Volo and Cynthia are used to foreshadow one more thing, which took a lot of people by surprise: a difficult final battle. Cynthia's champion battle is regarded as the hardest boss fight in Pokemon history, which it is, no question about it, and as we come close to the final part of the post-game story in Legends Arceus, we learn that Volo has Cynthia's traits, and this is where the red herring comes in again. Since Cynthia was a good character and Volo helped us, when we're seen as an outcast from the village, we assume that even if Volo acted suspicious multiple times throughout the game really, he is indeed good. However, it turns out he is evil and then challenges to a battle, a challenging battle may I add. Using an almost exact carbon copy of her team except for one Pokemon and a wild gimmick, having 2 Giratina battle phases. Personally, I wasn't surprised with this twist, but it does show how the elements of the past are used to foreshadow and link certain characters through core traits, and can be used as a red herring to foreshadow a possible outcome. As in this case, the red herring here was that, he's Cynthia's ancestor, and since Cynthia is good, and even though Volo was very suspicious through the majority of the game, because of this red herring, it kind of deferred us away from the fact that Volo actually was suspicious. Looking back at what I've written, I realized that basically all foreshadowing is made through leitmotifs in a way, but I want to look at the different class of foreshadowing through what I'll call it narrative description. I find this different to leitmotifs because unlike leitmotifs, they have recurring elements and themes that build upon each other. Narrative descriptions, I find, show something that will have importance later on. So now let's take a look at The Last of Us game. The game's intro is possibly one of the greatest intros ever. As the outbreak starts, we play as Joel's daughter, Sarah, as she tries to find her dad in their home. Once she finds him, along with her uncle Tommy, they escape into the city, in hopes of finding help, which puts them on a detour where they encounter a police officer. Sadly, due to higher orders, he is told to kill them, and shoots Joel and Sarah, and Joel hugs his daughter close to avoid the shots, and then we learn that Sarah actually did get shot, and in a few minutes she passes away in her father's arms. I mean, even writing this down, this brings back that moment to me. Like, it's so touching and heart-wrenching. But moving on, we now see this as Joel's character trope, a man who has lost his daughter in his own arms, and Naughty Dogs make sure that we know that. Joel grows close to Ellie along their journey across America, and there is one conversation with Tommy where Joel wants to leave Ellie with him because he believes that he is not capable of taking care of her. This shows us how Joel believes that he failed as a father all those years ago, and instead of trying to protect Ellie, he wants to take the easy way out in order to avoid the chance of feeling all that pain again. And as we get to the ending of the game, Joel does a possibly controversial action depending on what you believe to be right and wrong, and goes on a hospital rampage to save Ellie. Since his conversation with Tom, he has now chosen to go out of his shell and choose to keep Ellie, rather than letting her die, and lies to her about the whole situation. Now, if we look back at what I mean about foreshadowing, it does make it clear that Joel's whole mission is to protect his daughter, which Ellie has taken the role of, leading him to protect her under all costs, even if it may be morally right or wrong. In terms of foreshadowing, although it is not explicitly told what explicitly will be foreshadowed, the redemption feelings of Joel are to evolve and revolve around the tremendous loss that he felt at the start of the game. So this is not necessarily foreshadowing, but more of a redemption, I think. But now back to actual foreshadowing in Inscryption. Again, major spoilers, this game is an absolute ride, so skip this section if you have not played it at all. Like, really, I highly recommend that you play it. But okay, right, foreshadowing. Actually, it is really hard to actually explain what Inscryption actually is, what type of game it is, even if you have played it, but okay, I'm not going to try. I'm probably going to scuff this, but in Inscryption, you play as a YouTuber who plays a video game about cards, where in the game you are playing cards whilst also being in an escape room held hostage by the game master, Leshy. That is the basic gist of Act 1, and in Act 1 you meet cards that actually talk to the player. 3 of them to be exact, and one of these cards is the first one you meet, the Stoat. The Stoat constantly talks to the player, giving advice, and a big foreshadowing aspect, talks when you reach one of the upgrade areas. There are 2 types of upgrades you can get for your cards. One that gives your card a sigil of sorts, which gives it a special ability, which is given at the cost of sacrificing one of your other cards, and 2, a health and power upgrade, increasing the health points and attack power of the card, which is done at a campfire surrounded by hunters, where there is a RNG chance of the hunters actually taking and eating your card for good. Now to the Stoat. At the sigil upgrades, he volunteers to be given the upgrade and eating the card. Wait, no, that didn't make really sense there. But yeah, no, since the Stoat is a fairly weak card, you agree with his reasoning and let him get the upgrade. But at the campfires, the Stoat will tell you, don't pick me. Based on what I just said, the Stoat being a weak card, you don't really understand why he doesn't want to get the chance of getting a powerful upgrade. However, you can also understand that he is also suspicious of the hunters. Point is, Stoat takes the easy option and refuses the option with a chance of him dying in it. So, once you do get to the end of Act 2 and then later on Act 3, you understand that the Stoat actually had an ulterior motive where it just wanted to stay alive. In order for it to take control of the game, so in Act 3, the Stoat, known as P.O., I don't remember his name, he's just some robot thing, but becomes the game master. This is foreshadowing done right. There are hints that suggest that the Stoat is suspicious, but also, these hints also suggest that he's being reasonable to you, the player, and that is also what makes this good. When characters build up their trust with you, the player, and especially in the world of Inscryption, where everything around you is suspicious, it makes it easier for you to believe and fall back on the lessers of the suspiciousness, I think. In this case, the Stoat, which makes a wild turn of events when it turns out it really was evil. The hints were there from the start, but under different circumstances, we saw them differently. And we're at the end of the video. I would like to go on about foreshadowings, but there would be way too many to cram into one video, so I'll try and conclude. Foreshadowing really is used in storytelling for a major reason, I believe, and that is to make sure that the outcome doesn't make the player feel like they're being played around with. Using subtle hints that our subconsciousness picks up makes it so that when we do reach the big moment that has been foreshadowed, we as players can understand that, yeah, this does make sense, and the writers were preparing me for it. Foreshadowing is, simply put, a tool used to make sure that the surprise is still a surprise, but a surprise that respects us, by not coming straight out of left field. Hey guys, welcome to the end of the video, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you're doing great. I mean, maybe I'll do a part 2 on this one day. I mean, I really enjoyed writing about foreshadowings, and like I said, there would be way too many to cram into one video, but maybe a part 2 would be something. But yeah, what do you guys think of foreshadowing? Leave your takes down below, and any support is appreciated. I'm off to play some Elden Ring, and so should you, so adios and Storm out.